Welcome from Read Washington. We're so glad you are here today. We're going to learn about climbing the ladder of reading and writing, meeting the needs of all learners, which is, I'm sure everyone can attest to. It's very important. My name is Julie Bedell, and I am a founding member of Read Washington and also the current board president. Our mission is, well, we are a nonprofit, and our mission is to provide professional reading development to anyone who will listen, actually, on the science of reading so that every child can become a reader. In Washington State, we are not at our 95% close to read level or at read level or at grade level, and we want to get there, because we want to prevent the unnecessary pain of reading failure. But we're proud, while we are proud to be from Read Washington, we do have a global reach, and our next slide will show that. There we are. And this is where Amy's going to take it away and tell you a little bit about the logistics of today.
Yeah, so the map that is up right now is showing that even though we are Read Washington and our focus when we started and still is Washington State, we are very proud and excited about our global reach. And part of that comes from our amazing roster of presenters we've had, and today's presenters included in that. So today for our registration today, we have 37 countries represented, which we're pretty excited about. And once the video is ready, hopefully it will go even further than that. And this is our board. So as Julie mentioned, she's a founding member and our current board president. I'm Amy Fleischer. Jan Hasbrouck is also a founding member. And then we also have Frank Greif on our board. And our newest board addition, which we're so thrilled with, is Ingrid Nyberg, a reading specialist in the Shoreline School District, who has made great changes with her readers there. And we're so thrilled to have her part of our team. And yes, I just have to say, on the map, we did realize right before we started that New Zealand was accidentally cropped off our map. So we'll make sure we fix that. We know that New Zealand is a strong representation. So quick, important housekeeping. This is our time schedule for today. Jan and Nancy will present. These are all approximate times. So we'll do our best to stick to them, but who knows what happens. Please put your questions. We hope to have time for question and answer. So please put your questions in the question and answer chat feature of Zoom, not in the chat. Just allows us to make sure we really capture those. And then we'll wrap up with a few announcements. There will be some links that you'll find on readwa.org on our homepage about purchasing the book and some other important information that Jan and Nancy will share. And then we will have hopefully our fastest turnaround yet for the video today, so that we can get that out and share it with everyone as soon as possible. So that is our housekeeping, and which brings us, and I see people are still saying New Hampshire, Vermont, Missouri, love it, to the meat of the presentation, Dr. Nancy Young and Dr. Jan Hasbrouck. So Julie and I will sign off and hand it over to them.
Very good. All right. We're happy to be here. And let's take it away, Nancy.
Yes. I think, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, your slides. Yes, take it away, Nancy. Thank you, everybody, for attending. It's really fun. It's really distracting to see all the chats arriving, but it's also really fun. So thank you for putting your home location in the chat box. And we are so delighted to have so many people here and so many people who are going to be watching the recording later, and just really thrilled to be able to share information about really a labor of love that we have worked on very hard, and other people have worked on very hard. So thank you so much for being here. It has been a long journey. If you attended the reveal of my 2021 version of my infographic. It's since been updated just for the book. But if you attended the reveal, you would have seen a slide at that time saying, there was going to be a book. And now here it is, February 2024, and we are presenting, and Read Washington again is hosting this session about the book. So it happened through 2021. Things, to the end of 2021, things were being put into place early 2022, and then contacting authors, or people inviting authors to contribute. Working with those authors on their drafts through 2022 into 2023, more editing, lots of work with authors, with the benchmark editors, just a huge team effort to put this together. And really lots of thoughtful decisions. And it was hard at times to decide what to include. We had to cut things out, including cutting things out from our own chapters. So we just thought we would add this picture of kind of how we looked for many months as we worked through this.
A very accurate representation of our work, which was done in two countries, because Nancy is in Canada, I'm in Seattle, Washington. So we did this work often 7 days a week. We would have little Zoom meetings. Yes, we're all grateful for Zoom for allowing that kind of collaboration, and it allowed it to happen, but it didn't make it any easier. There's a lot of work and effort with great joy done as we did this work. But it was a long process.
Yes. I'm glad you brought up the joy, because when I put this into our slides, I thought, oh, that looks kind of negative. I always tell people I'm all about the fun, but we did want you to know that it's a very readable book. We were trying to keep it so it wasn't too long. It is a little longer than we anticipated, but everybody worked as a team to make sure it wasn't a dense, long book. And so that took a lot of thinking. So, but great journey.
And part of the early decision, one of the first decisions, was the fact that it was going to be an edited book. We had talked about, Nancy had reached out to me about her updated ladder, and talked about perhaps writing a book about the ladder. And we thought about that and decided that instead of us trying to read about all the vast variety of needs that children need, and then trying to state it ourselves, we would reach out to experts in the field. And so that was really a wonderful part of this journey. And the discussion about having a book was very clear and very, very straightforward, because we support teachers. We have both been teachers. We continue to work with teachers, and sometimes when we're very lucky, with students themselves. And we know how hard teaching is. We know that the teaching of reading is very challenging. And the information just keeps coming as the research keeps, and many more of us these days have committed to making sure that we are using evidence-based practices. And that makes this already challenging job even more challenging, trying to keep up with all this. And then I'm sure all of us are aware that in the background, there's going on these wars. Poor teachers are trying to figure out what we should teach, and they hear different things from different people, and often not presented simply as a discussion, but almost we've talked about the reading wars, and that is the antithesis of what we're doing. We want this book. We felt the book was needed to serve as a bridge to the teachers in the classroom, and the best evidence that we could provide.
And just interjecting there, and also we really wanted to write it for a broad audience, so that Dean's art of the perspiring individual represents parents, and represents librarians, and represents state legislators, and represents the vast number of people who are really concerned. And so it really is written for a broad audience.
Yes, thank you for adding that, Nancy. It really is. I was just, I look at that perspiring individual and immediately think of classroom teachers. But yes, the parents and community members and legislators all were top of mind when we were writing this book. And no more wars, because our job is too important, and we're all in this together, the parents and the legislators and the teachers and community members, pediatricians, specialists. We are committed to providing the information, doing the best we can to make sure that all of our children are successful. And we can be quite confident in making that statement, all means all, because of this growing body of evidence that we have that just keeps telling us that this is true. We know that the number, there's great consensus around the number that somewhere around 95% of children can be taught to read and write, at least at an adequate level. There's a certain percentage of children for whom literacy is not going to be available, but even for those children, they can have access to whatever they are capable of doing. So we really do mean all. And we want to do that. And the only way we're going to get there is through a teamwork, us all working together. The teachers connecting to this evidence-based practices, being supported by coaches and building leaders, also expanding to parents and community members. And we are very grateful to those policymakers and legislators who are trying to stay evidence aligned. So yeah, we're all about the team, and we're in this work because this is the image we want. We want our children to be successful readers and writers. We want them to be joyous readers and writers as well. So we were blessed by the collaboration, as you're going to see if you don't yet have the book, or if you've not done a preview online, the wealth of collaboration from individuals literally from all over the world, including our dear friend and champion of our work, Dr. Marianne Wolf. We reached out to her. She was, I have worked with her. Some of you are aware of a little group called the Peaceniks that I'm a member of, and Marianne is part of that too. But even prior to the Peaceniks being formulated as a group, Nancy had worked with Dr. Wolf because Marianne is a fan of Nancy's infographic. So we both had connections with Marianne. And when we reached out to her, knowing how incredibly busy she is, we were just thrilled and honored that she said she would take time to write the foreword for our book. And this quote from her foreword, that the power of Nancy's infographic is its basis in research and its central goal to ensure that regardless of where a child is on the continuum of ease, they receive the instruction and the support they need. This entire volume reflects this goal through multiple lenses. So we're eager to share the entire volume with you piece by piece. And so I'm now going to turn the presentation over to Nancy.
Okay. So here we go. Hopefully this is right now. Okay. All right. So because the book was the basis, or the infographic was the basis for the book, and perhaps some of you are not familiar with the infographic, we thought it'd be a good idea that I go through the infographic and just give you the synopsis. If you're on a small device, don't worry. You can go to my website later and look in more detail at the infographic. But this infographic has evolved, just like the science of reading evolves. And this is the latest version, which I hope will be around for a long time. Looked at this very, very carefully as the book was being written, because I wanted to make sure that what was in the book aligned to the infographic really well, but also, like I said, I didn't want this to, I wanted this to be lasting. So there were some wording changes made in 2023. So here we go with the title. The title is The Ladder of Reading and Writing. And both of those skills are important, and both of them are reciprocal. So we want to keep them in mind all the time as we are teaching literacy. The ladder itself on the left, Dean Stanton did the art, and when he did the art, I had a request that the children, the main thing was the children were smiling. And because really, I feel passionately that we want to make this a positive, joyous experience. And as Jan said, success can bring joy, but I'm all about the fun, even though I was frowning while I was doing different parts of this book because I take a lot of things seriously. But there are the climbing children climbing up the ladder, and different children are going to climb that ladder at a different pace. And that brings us to the continuum, which is in the middle of the infographic, representing the continuum, the continuous distribution, the range of ease at which children master these skills of reading and writing. And there is a wide range of ease with which children master, and that has instructional implications. And in the orange and red, the words are depicting the instructional implications. Of course, with an infographic, you cannot put everything, but these words I felt were the most important words that we needed to be thinking about in systematic design of our instruction. And on the right, comprehensive analytical approach to learning language structure likely essential. And this was very intentional in the 2023 update to make it clear that these children need more than phonics. They need a comprehensive needs-based approach that includes morphology, semantic syntax. We're including background knowledge. We're addressing language difficulties as needed. It is comprehensive. That word comprehensive means more than one thing. And then within the infographic itself, you'll see the word explicit in various parts. Now, the form of explicit instruction can range. The amount of explicit instruction will range. And the infographic depicts the ease at which children learn to read, but also tells us that our instruction is going to be designed to recognize that range of ease. And some children require much more explicit instruction. Some require less. Some can go at a much faster pace, and we need to recognize that in our design of instruction. And again, you can go back and look at this more closely later. But in the 2023 update, I included the word implicit. And by then, it was really clear to me that the science of reading needed to include this term more. We have included it in our book. I want you to know that just because the word implicit is next to the light green, it doesn't mean that implicit learning doesn't apply to everybody who's climbing the ladder of reading and writing. But for some children, they need more explicit instruction to be able to learn implicitly. They need more bootstrapping. And so again, the design of instruction takes into account the need of the learner, but also we can't teach everything. And that word implicit is really, it's interesting because we did this update a year ago, and I feel like since then, Jan, implicit has become so much more a part of the conversation. But it is, we need both explicit instruction and implicit learning, and the book will give you more information about that. And the dark green children are those children who arrive at school already reading, or who really zoom up the ladder of reading and writing quickly. And just because I don't have explicit instruction here doesn't mean they don't need some explicit instruction in some things. But again, our instruction must be very intentional. And we are providing explicit instruction based on need. And on the right, you'll see the words extended learning and acceleration. And I go into this in the book, but just really quickly, extended learning, I used to have the word enrichment, and I decided to switch it to extended learning because every child deserves enriched learning. But this is a different type of learning. This is really complex, higher level thinking that these children are ready for at a much earlier age than typical. Some of these children will also will be considering acceleration. And that term, again, I go into in the book, but acceleration here means early entrance to school. Administrators, did you hear that? Legislators, did you hear that? Early entrance to school. And skipping a grade, perhaps going ahead in one subject. I know some of those things are actually holding, the legislation and policies are holding some of those children back. In the purple arrow, listed first, and I say you have to turn your head. You have to look at all the angles. So I'm going to turn my head, and I hope you're going to angle your head as well. So differentiation is a huge, huge message in my ladder of reading and writing infographic. Differentiation is a message throughout our book. And so this entails systematically designed instruction. And I used to have the word systematic in the red area, but actually Jan and I discussed this a lot and both agreed that every child, no matter where they are in the continuum, deserves systematically designed instruction. We are going to systematically design that instruction based on their need, and data informs our need. And then, oh yes, pointing that arrow. And then in the right, we have, I'm sorry, I've had this ongoing bronchial issue. So luckily Jan's doing the slides with me. In the right, we have environmental implications. And excuse me, this is not just where the child lives. The school and the teacher are part of the environmental implications of learning. And then we have within student factors, and in the book, we go to exceptionalities that our students have. Okay. Oh dear, I have to keep going. Oh wait, now I think, Jan, we are stopping sharing the screen.
Yeah, we're going to do a little transition, Nancy, to talk about introducing the chapters and the authors. So why don't I talk about our authors first and give your voice a little bit of rest? This is one of the reasons we wanted to not try to stick really hard to an agenda today, because we've got lots of things that we're going to take care of here. But what we're about to do now is walk you through each of the chapters and of this book. And as I mentioned earlier, we mentioned that this is an edited book. And in retrospect, I am incredibly glad that we decided to do that, because we reached out in all of the topics that we wanted to cover in this book to some of the premier. You will recognize, if you're an SOR person and you try your best to keep up with all this research, you will recognize many of these names. So we just reached out, people we knew, sometimes personally, sometimes we only knew them by reputation. And in almost 100% of the cases, people very generously agreed and said yes. And then we gave them all a real challenge by saying, we want you to write about your expertise in this critically complex and important area. And you're going to get all of 2,000 words to do that. And you need to keep in mind that you're not writing for your traditional research colleagues. This is not a research journal. This is for that broad audience. Please think of parents and teachers and people who want to access your information, but in a very useful and usable format. So this was another challenge. As a former researcher, well, I currently do research, but a former professor, we write all the time in a certain kind of genre and format, and we ask these people to do something very different. And you'll also see that many of these people, as I suspected they would, and we asked them to be sure to do that, they brought in colleagues, often doctoral students that they were working with. The process of this book, though, went on for so long that some of those doctoral students, by the time the book was published, were actually professors of their own right in new positions at different universities. So it was an exciting process. We're deeply grateful to all of the authors for for their contributions and for really working hard to take their expertise and make it so accessible. Oh, you're still muted, Nancy.
All right. I think I can keep going now. Thank you, Jan. That was planned, that break. Thank you.
Yeah.
But I am having a hard time talking very long. The other, we are going to go through the chapters, but this will just be a fleeting glimpse. The pictures with us frowning, that was us this week, trying to figure out what we could put in our slides, because every chapter has so much valuable information. So it is truly a fleeting glimpse into what the content of the book is. So let me share the screen. All right. So here we have part one, and Dean Stanton from Calgary, Alberta, was commissioned to do the artwork, and we just love what he did. I love his work, fun and funky, and all sorts of messages within his art. So here is our first chapter, and I'm going to move. Hopefully you can see the whole thing without Laura's name being covered. So thank you to Laura Stewart for writing this chapter. Laura delivered the message and did a wonderful job connecting the infographic to the message of our book. And I have to tell you, I feel like I could cry. When I first read Laura's draft and she was writing all these amazing words about my work, I was just going, is that me? So Laura, truly, you captured so well what I was trying to get across in the infographic. And you made me so happy in taking that to how we can improve instruction for all students. And you really captured the broad audience as well. Your chapter, Dolores' chapter, is not just about educators, but it's about the number of people. And we're all in this mission together. And Laura, this is one of her sentences at the very end that really we must act together with urgency and conviction. And I love that she brought in the team approach, which is central to our book, but it was amazing how people just brought this in without us having to ask them, right, Jan? It was incredible. So I'm trying to think of what else I had. It was just such a lovely chapter. This chapter, just so you know, we organized the book so that you can start anywhere, because we thought you might be a teacher who has a new student who has an exceptionality, and you want to know how you can support them right away. So you can jump into any part of the book, but you can also read it from beginning to end. And this chapter will inform seasoned educators, but it also will help people who are just taking their first steps, as this term called the science of reading gets so much press. So thank you, Laura. Oh, this is me. Thank you, Nancy. This chapter is all about the infographic, and I actually go into more detail than I just gave you in that synopsis. So I encourage everyone to read this chapter, because every word, every image, every part of that infographic is there for a reason. And so throughout this chapter, I have described what the word means, what the words mean, what the features are. And then we have, throughout the book, another decision was the citations, right, Jen? We have cited the book. The book we think is very easy to read, but it was really important to us that we back up what we were saying. So you will see citations throughout, and then at the very end of the book, you can go and find information about those citations. But in this chapter 2, you'll see citations showing the importance of writing. And this chapter is really a chapter. Laura's message is setting the stage for the book, and then this is setting the stage for looking at our individual learners, who is learning, what they need, and why they need it. And this is paramount in making sure that we address the needs of all who are climbing the ladder of reading and writing. Chapter 3, I was so fortunate to co-author with Margie Gillis. Some of you will know Margie. Some of you will have heard her name. She was the lead author, and truly what a delight to work through this very, very important chapter. This chapter is a little bit longer than some of the others because we felt we needed to set the groundwork for the other chapters that refer to things that we have in our chapter. And in this chapter, we go through key terminology. We go through the components of language structure. We go through the different areas of the continuum and the instructional implications, and we give examples. We have vignettes of students in those 4 different colored areas of the ladder of reading and writing. And truly, with all the furor going on in the world while we were writing this book, there was a lot of thoughtful deliberation over what to include here, how to describe it, and even the definitions that we chose. And Jan was sometimes a part of those conversations, and sometimes the 3 of us would be back and forth all weekend on the how we describe phonemic awareness. We spent a whole weekend back and forth, and it still might have taken a bit more time, but everything very, very carefully done because there is a lot of confusion out there, and we wanted to be as clear as we could and as grounded in the research. And the other thing we do say in this chapter and elsewhere in the book, probably in the conclusion, there's still a lot we need to know about this, about teaching reading and writing. There's a lot we don't know. And so what this chapter does is give teachers the basis that will help them move forward based on the best information that we have available, recognizing we still need to ask questions and we still need to be prepared to evolve as time goes on. So here is the quote that I chose for the chapter with Margie. And this chapter really, really makes it clear that we need effective, needs-based, differentiated instruction. We cannot have a one-size-fits-all. And within that needs-based, differentiated instruction, we need to be looking both at what children need to learn and then the best methods for teaching those children. Always looking at where they are on the ladder of reading and writing, what they know already, what they need to know, and the pace at which they best learn, and how much explicit instruction. All these details are part of this chapter. And I think I'm stopping sharing there.
Yeah, you stop sharing. I'll take over and continue the that walkthrough. Okay, I need to move this out of the way, the chat. I don't even see if I am sharing, not yet. Share screen, here we go. So picking it up, yes, this back and forth takes a little bit of practice. So when Nancy talked about that she and Margie in that really the longest chapter in the book, chapter 3, we devoted extra space for that because it really maps out the whole structure for the rest of the book. But the quote from that Nancy took from that chapter talked about we must provide need-based instruction. And so that leads right into chapter 4, which I had the privilege of writing. Many of you, or some of you, perhaps know that getting data right is very important to me. It's been something I've been focused on a lot, both as a practitioner, as we all need to be, but also a researcher. So I was really delighted to have my opportunity to talk about the needs for data-informed instruction. And the quote that I chose from the book to represent this chapter starts with the idea, the fact that observation of our students is part of data. Sometimes we think that it's only those reliable, valid, commercially available, oftentimes assessments that we use for that kind of data. But we acknowledge, and any parent, any practicing teacher understands the incredible value of observation. So we wanted to make that clear in this chapter too. But along with the observation, which is essential, we need other kinds of information to make our instructional decisions, and we want to do it as efficiently as possible. So that's the focus of this chapter as well. What are our best tools to answer those questions about our students' needs? And in order to be as efficient as possible, to maximize time, because it's the time for instruction that we want to have and intervention as needed, we have to have systems and structures in place. So that's really the message, the overall message of this chapter on data. We need data, absolutely essential. It includes the more formal data, but also observation. And let's do it as efficiently and effectively as possible. And that ties right in as well to chapter 5. Because when we're really making a focus, as we did in this book, based on Nancy's infographic, that all means all, we know that because of the infographic, the beautiful message of the infographic of the continuum of need is that our students, our children are very different. Their needs are very different. So we've got these children in a classroom who may be those children in the dark green. Some will be in the light green and the orange and the red. How in the world do we manage to provide instruction that is sufficiently differentiated to meet their needs? Well, we knew we wanted to give practical advice, so it was very clear to us right away that the person we wanted to write this chapter was Vicki Gibson. I've known Vicki for many decades, a good friend and longtime colleague of mine, who I knew when I was in Texas as a professor at Texas A&M University, and Vicki still works there. But one of the things I got to see when I was there living in College Station, Texas, were Vicki's schools that she organized around a management system, a classroom management organizational system that I have never seen the likes of anywhere else. And Vicki has written a couple of books about that too, which Nancy had read. So it was an easy decision to reach out to Vicki to ask her to share her system in the book. So, and one of the things we know, all teachers know, that when you've got this wide variety of children and always limited time and resources, that if you really want to differentiate instruction, that implementation is going to take some focus. And implementation in a classroom setting will often mean that at least some of the time you may be doing some explicit systematic instruction with a group of children who are participating in that teacher-led instruction. So what do the other children do? That's really the question that Vicki has figured out a strategy for doing this that is very organized to keep the other students engaged in active practice. Because one of the downsides, of course, we know about differentiating instruction using small groups is that the children spend an awful lot of time on their own. So that's another reason that Nancy and I are big fans of Vicki's work, because her organization system is not just to make time so that the teacher can provide instruction, but it optimizes the activities and the time that the students are doing. They are purposefully engaged in collaboration, and that word purposefully engaged in collaboration, and very thoughtfully designed independent practice, which is the steps of I do, we do, you do. The independent practice is necessary for instruction too. So, but how to do it? So this chapter, I think you will be thrilled if you're looking for some ideas, because it gets into a lot of detail about managing your time, managing the environment, managing the students' behaviors, and managing instruction, and a step-by-step process for how to get there. Organizing the classroom environment is step one, and she provides the guidelines for how to do that. Those routines and procedures, some superb management tools that she has that are appropriate for managing preschool classrooms or elementary classrooms or middle school or high school classrooms, because this kind of differentiation can be done across all the grades. And then how to manage the grouping. I've got my small group and the kids are collaborating and other kids are working independently. How do we manage all that? And if we get that done right, we get to step 5, which is providing the instruction. But she's provided this framework so all of those other pieces are taken care of, so teachers can focus then on the differentiated instruction. And that takes us to part 2 of our book, which is where we invited a number of authors and colleagues to write about some of the exceptional needs of students that all teachers will encounter as they are teaching in a classroom and attempting to provide the needs of all students. So I wrote the chapter on dyslexia, happy to do that, having written a different book for the same publisher, Benchmark Education. I wrote a book about dyslexia. In that book that I wrote, and some of you know the story, that I have not only been a teacher of children who struggle with learning to read, including dyslexia, but that I have a daughter who has dyslexia. So this chapter, of course, remember all the chapters are very concise. I wanted to share the most current research we had on this challenging exceptionality and explain some of the complexities of dyslexia, but and a very current definition of dyslexia, ways that we have to identify who those students are and support them as they attempt to learn to read and write, even with that challenge. Another exceptionality that we address in the book is specific reading comprehension disability. We reached out to Nathan Clemens, who has done just really seminal work in this area. He's really considered one of the leaders in his work at the University of Texas. And he was one of the professors who brought along as a co-author a then doctoral student of his, Kathleen O'Donnell, who by the time the book was finished was graduated, had her PhD, and had been offered, and she took a position at the University of Utah. So very grateful for their combined expertise in this disability, this area of exceptionality that not everybody may be familiar with, but they do a really good explanation of SRCD, specific reading comprehension disability. And these are the children that, even though some of them are actually quite good at the decoding part, still have significant difficulties understanding their text. It's not a large percentage of children who have this disability, but they do exist. And the message message of this chapter, as is all the chapters, is that there's good news for these children. They can, even though they have this disability, they can significantly improve their reading comprehension when provided with there's those terms again, systematically designed, explicit instruction, appropriate to what their needs are. And like many of the messages of these experts who wrote the chapters, the instruction needs to be integrated. It's not just piecemeal. Let's teach them some vocabulary, and then let's teach background knowledge, and then we'll teach comprehension strategies. So I know you will enjoy reading this chapter as much as I did from these experts about real ways to do this with those children. Chapter 8 in our book was one that Nancy and I chose to write together. And that was really, it came almost as an afterthought in a way, because the message of the new updated infographic was retitled from the original Climbing the Ladder of Reading. Nancy expanded it as a reflection of our better understanding of the integration of reading and writing. And we were hopeful that we would cover aspects of reading and writing in all of the chapters rather than separating it out. But it became clear as the authors, and as you recall, we gave those authors very few words to be able to write about their specialty. So writing, we felt, was getting a little bit of a short shrift, and we wanted to bring in the best understanding we had of those children who really struggle with writing, including dysgraphia. So we chose to write that chapter ourselves. But we both did a really extensive and deep dive into the current research literature about helping all students become proficient writers. And it was very clear to us we wanted, and we addressed both transcription and generation, because many of our students struggle with one or the other. They have their handwriting is adequate, but other aspects of generating writing is difficult. Some of our students struggle only with the handwriting, but many of our students struggle with both. So both are addressed in that chapter. Chapter 8, many of our students in our classrooms, and it's probably underdiagnosed as we read the submission from Tiffany Hogan and her colleagues. So we actually, for developmental language disorder, again, it was rather a no-brainer to reach out to Tiffany Hogan, and thrilled again that she graciously said she would take time, because she is really one of the, at least one, if not the most well-recognized international experts on developmental language disorder. And we were absolutely thrilled when she wanted to bring in a colleague who is a practitioner in this field. So this is one of those places where it just hits perfectly that sweet spot, that intersection between research and practice. But their chapter really talked about how many students actually have developmental language disorder, and it's often not really identified as clearly as it should be. And those students are in our classroom, and of course are going to have difficulty with reading and writing because they struggle with understanding and using language. And for these students, because of their disability, it's often it's a mystery about why that's happening. But once again, there's a clear and positive message from this chapter that we can address their needs by being more aware of who they are and aware of those best strategies. So they talk about those targeted assessments to identify these students and identify where their instructional needs are. And then some guidelines for many resources also included in this chapter for those interventions that will support these students. And chapter 10, once again, this was an easy call when we knew we wanted to include a chapter on attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, a challenge that so many of our students face, and it's often co-occurring with many of the the comprehension issues, dyslexia, language disorder. Many of those students also struggle with attention deficit disorder. And an easy call for us to reach out to Carolyn Denton, somebody I've known for many decades. Carolyn originally was a student of mine back at Texas A&M. She entered as a master's student and stayed on to do her doctoral work and ended up doing many years of research, often in collaboration with Jack Fletcher and Barbara Foreman at the University of Texas. And some of her focus was on attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So we're bringing in someone who was a teacher, has that wonderful practitioner background, but also as a researcher. And Carolyn's chapter was just phenomenal because she did a brilliant job with her limited words of really defining what ADHD is real clearly, and an up-to-date understanding of this disorder, and some really wonderful, helpful, appropriate interventions. And again, like in all the chapters, so many wonderful resources of where you can go. Because these chapters are short, not meant to be the answer for everything, but that was, so we asked every author to include lots of resources, and Carolyn did a wonderful job with that. So that's the end of my presentation right now, my share. And so I'll stop sharing, and Nancy, you can take it from there. Nancy, you're still muted.
All right, try again. Take 2. Yes, I was just thinking about those resources, and we did list some. We actually had too many resources for a lot of the chapters. So we have some information for book publishers at a hub, online hub, not book publishers, book owners. And book owners can get more there, but we do have a number of resources listed in the book. But I do remember thinking, oh, there wasn't enough room for everything. So here we go. All right, I'm on chapter 11, intellectual disability, and I think I should be able to talk for a while. It was really good timing that we organized our slides this way. So this chapter, written by Jennifer Stewart, Carlin Connor, and Stephanie Alateba, I have to tell you, this chapter was in my mind from the beginning of mapping out what I thought the book should contain. And again, I have tears in my eyes because many years ago, I worked as an educational assistant in special education in schools in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And we had children with intellectual disability, and we didn't teach them how to read. There was no expectation that they could learn how to read. For the more advanced ones, maybe they would do some whole word memorization. But a few years ago, I found research, and some of that research is actually cited in this chapter, that said that children with intellectual disability with explicit instruction and given time and appropriate support can learn to read gain skills far above what people had expected in the past. So, those of you who are a little older will remember Star Trek and Scotty, and I think I can't beam myself back to helping those children, just like many watching, you can't beam yourself back. But as you go forward, you can work on what you now know. So this chapter is an important chapter because these co-authors provide really valuable information for our children with intellectual disability. And when we say all means all, we really do mean that. And so people are going to find information there to support these children. And parents are going to not only find information, but be able to, we hope, take the book to the school and say, look, this is what my child needs. And the quote here that I chose really shows that the students can progress beyond simply memorizing high-frequency words. And the key is explicit instruction. And the information in the chapter that these co-authors gave was so valuable. And it was just so exciting to read about the advances in the science for children who have intellectual disabilities. Chapter 12, Deaf and Hard of Hearing. This was, it came on my radar because at one point before the book was being mapped out, I heard of the Atlanta Speech School, and I wanted to know more. I think it was Margie Gillis who was doing work there, and I said, oh, I need to know more. I'm always saying I need to know more. So I connected with them, and I just said, I just want to know more about teaching children who are deaf and hard of hearing to read. And the picture here is from the Atlanta Speech School. And the device that the teacher is wearing, I remember about 10 years ago modeling in a school, and I was given a device to wear. And at that point, I really knew nothing about what the device did, and I didn't know how important it was. And this chapter, as I worked with Erica, and then the chapter author is Erica Jones, who is at the Atlanta Speech School, and high expertise in this area of deaf and hard of hearing. And it was just a delight to be able to learn from Erica as we were editing the chapter. And I want to thank Erica because just near the very end, when the design, the folks in design were putting pictures into the book, we were sending the chapters to the chapter authors to have them approve. And Erica said, reached out and said, you know, some of the photos aren't the technology is dated, or they aren't exactly accurate. And so we talked to Erica, and a permission process was put in place, and Erica obtained permission to have photos from the Atlanta Speech School in her chapter. Excuse me. And you are going to, again, have tears in your eyes when you see some of the photos that we were given permission to include in the book. And so Erica's chapter is very, very informative about the importance of language. She talks about language nutrition and talks about all the ways that the team, families, educators, even when a child is at the zoo on a field trip with school, everybody can be building this foundation of language. And she gives ways to do this. It's just a very exciting chapter. Every chapter is so exciting. It's really, you know, every time I would read one, I think, oh, this is so fantastic. And then I go to the next, oh, it's so fantastic. So, but actually, you know, maybe this is the most important because it's my chapter on advanced in reading. I'm not biased at all, right? But anyhow, this was another one that I knew that the book wouldn't have been involved if we couldn't have had a chapter on students who are advanced in reading. And I came up with this acronym AIR. I just, you know, having worked with so many acronyms, I decided we needed one to really put our advanced in reading students into the picture. And Deen's art on this page is in that chapter. And I think here, you can see that Deen's art helps bring the message diversity and inclusion. That is so important. I think Jan's due to present soon, so that's good. Excuse me. So advanced readers, they need to be moving forward. They cannot be held back. And in the chapter, I talk about that. Every student needs to be moving forward at the pace that is appropriate for where they are in skill development, and the pace and the methods that are appropriate for their learning. And so one size fits all it does not work. We really have to be aware of these students, and we have to honor their needs. Every child on the continuum deserves to be honored for where they are and served. So the pace, appropriate, and the chapter has a lot of information about how to support our advanced readers. Okay, I think, Jan, you're next.
That's it. So if you stop sharing, then I will share.
Perfect.
Look at us. We're pulling this off, Nancy. Part 3 of our book. We had great help from our amazing editors in organizing this book this way, and the different parts of the book. We had it organized very differently at the beginning. We had a list of things, and we reached out to authors, and it was the editors who found this, what seems to me a really nice organization. That part 1 with Laura Stewart's message and the walk through the infographic and those foundational chapters that apply to all learners, which is the classroom organization and the data collection, and then part 2, which is the exceptionalities. And then we had these leftover topics that we thought were very important, all very important, not leftovers in terms of importance, but just how to organize it. So we organized this, the editor suggested just the additional considerations. So one of the additional considerations, as we all know, all of us who are teachers, parents, are our older students. We are doing our best, and so much of the work of the science of reading, that evidence base that we're paying attention to, is focusing, rightfully so, on our preschool, kindergarten, first and second grade readers. We've just exponentially learned so much about the importance of early intervention and the benefits of early intervention. And we're all getting better, we hope, at doing that. The evidence seems to say that that's true. But there will always be older students in our classrooms. So we knew we wanted to address it in their own separate chapter. We reached out first to Sharon Vaughn, somebody I've, again, had the privilege to know and work with when I was in Texas. She was at the other major flagship university. I was at Texas A&M, and she was at UT and still is. And Sharon did exactly the same thing as some of the others, reached out to doctoral students, Christy and Elizabeth, or Liz, as she goes by, and they went through the process of creating this fabulous chapter, and then both of them got their doctorates and moved on to other universities. And 2 of the co-authors ended up both at the University of Utah, who had worked with us when they were students. This chapter, when I was reading it, was just resonated with me because I've had the privilege of working with a lot of older struggling readers, and it was just so both straightforward in the acknowledgement that those students are there and that their needs are different because they've been through so much instruction, and very honest about the challenges that those particular students face. But once again, some really straightforward, helpful, clear guidance that these children, we can't just accommodate. We can't just do those adjustments and accommodations for them. They deserve to be taught to read, and it's not too late. It does become more difficult, but this chapter is really organized around some strategies that come out of the decades of Sharon Vaughn's research. So you're looking for ideas for how to help students become accurate and efficient readers, even when they are past that early intervention stage. You're really going to enjoy this chapter. It's not just writing about these students, but what to do, as all the chapters are. Then we want, in chapter 15, we knew, of course, because we work in the real world where we know that children come to school not always speaking the standard general language of the classroom. In our country, in the United States, it's English, many other countries. So we reached out. I had just finished actually working on a project with Kimyana Burke, who we were both asked to co-edit a special edition of an American Psychological Association publication on, and the special edition was about the science of reading and how the science of reading and the effect that it needs, the importance of making sure that all students have access to best practices. So I was aware of Dr. Burke's work in leading much of the change going on in Mississippi. And she really has some specializations in this area of working with those children who speak variations of English. And she brought on a colleague from hers in Excel and Ed, Casey Sullivan Taylor, and we're very pleased with their agreement and their wonderful chapter that talks about the reality of in many communities, significant numbers of children who come with language variations that can affect their reading, writing, and spelling, and did a brilliant job of summarizing the body of research around this and synthesized some practical, specific, helpful ways of working with these students so they can make that journey up the ladder of reading and writing and be successful along the way. And along with our students who speak English, varieties of English, we know that we have growing numbers of children in this country and many other countries for varieties of reasons who are speak a different language as their first language. Many of our children now are multilingual. It's not just bilingual, but multi-languages that they're trying to, that they have acquired. And now we want to make sure they're successful in reading and writing in at least one of those languages. So once again, it was a clear decision for us to reach out to Cammie McBride, who is, again, internationally known in this particular field. And she brought along some of her colleagues and students to write this chapter with an acknowledgement of the fact that there is no one size fits all. It's not cookie cutter or lockstep where you put the students through just, a certain thing, because we have to consider what their first language, their L1 is, and what that looks like in both its oral and written form. But they talk about the importance of discussion and making discussion protocols and processes very engaging, how to incorporate those reading strategies and provide them in ways that are really emphasize that language for these students, frequent and repeated exposures to language, and then considering the factors of motivation and parental involvement, especially important for these students. So Nancy, I hope you feel somewhat recovered, because I'm going to turn it over to you to walk us through the remaining chapters of the book.
Okay, here we go. You'll take over if I start coughing. I really apologize for that. All right. So here we were. Yes. So chapter 17, socioeconomic factors, and who better to ask than Steve Dykstra. who has presented and talked and contributed in so many ways to the conversation about children who are coming from backgrounds of poverty. And I'm just going to flip right away to the quote, because this is Steve. He cuts to the chase, and he has a whole chapter talking about the importance of recognizing that students coming from poverty need high quality literacy instruction. And he also says that they will need more support in certain ways than other children because of their backgrounds, because they're coming in, and we need to provide their support. And I actually wrote this out, or typed this out this morning because I thought I would just read it because this is in Steve's chapter. For students whose sense of safety and security is not as firm as we would like it to be, who are already navigating a world that seems not to value them, the early experience of school will either establish it as an oasis where they can learn to reach for a future that they might otherwise never imagine, or yet another voice that whispers in their ear, telling them that they are not good enough, or smart enough, or valued enough. The message comes across at school. The message comes across at school and success are just more things that are not for them. Sorry, I wasn't reading that right. Yeah, so we need to send the message that they are valued, that they can do it, and not that school just is one more thing that is not for them. And he wrote, all children benefit from good instruction, but poor and vulnerable children absolutely require it. And one of the things about this chapter is, again, that it and all the chapters brought in where children might be in terms of the louder in reading and writing. So children with intellectual disability are in the red area on the ladder of reading and writing. And that was actually one of the reasons I took out dyslexia from, I forget whether it was 2021 or 23 version of the ladder of reading infographic, but I realized that there were so many more children who were in that red area. And so the red area isn't just dyslexia. But in terms of Steve's chapter on children coming from backgrounds of poverty, those children could be anywhere on the ladder of reading and writing. And when I present on advanced readers, I point out that we could have a child coming to school who is already reading, and we need to support them and move them forward because their environment might not support them moving forward in a way that another student in a different environment would be supported. So we don't want to box children in. Steve talks about the risks, and I think many of us are aware of the risks in terms of coming from backgrounds of poverty. But we want to be aware that not all children are going to struggle who are coming from poverty. And then once they get, that's one of the things about the advanced reader, the air that I mentioned. Some children, once they get that initial bootstrapping, they're going to start to soar. And we need to be ready to help them soar and not hold them back. Chapter 18, delighted to say that the co-authors are Amy and Julie, who have been visible already in this webinar. They are on the board of Read Washington and have worked hard to get this webinar organized. But we reached out to them when Jan and I decided to have a chapter on connecting school and home. And we just thought, who better to write it than these two ladies who are teachers and parents. And they wrote a fabulous chapter that includes information for parents and caregivers and information for teachers. And again, the message of this chapter is collaboration, teamwork. And the research shows that we need to be working as a team with the parents and caregivers. Educators need to be, and I've been trying to, I call it bridging the research silos. One of the silos is the research on the importance of involving parents and success at school. And one of the things that Amy and Julie address is the need to look at potential barriers that are getting in the way of parent involvement. We understand, they understand, and I'm sure you understand that not every parent wants to be involved, but there are also many parents who do want to be involved, who are not being welcomed, or who perhaps are welcome, but they have barriers. They have transportation issues. They have, issues with holding two jobs. They have lots of issues that are preventing them from being involved. And this chapter is really opening the door to saying, let's move forward and overcome those barriers. And build a strong partnership between school and home. And it's going to benefit everybody. And in terms of the broader reach of this school, we have, the wider community, the teamwork here in this message in the book is definitely huge. Chapter 19, technology. This technology will appear, or does appear, throughout the book. And it is part of providing instruction in different ways for different children based on needs. And there was a discussion as to whether or not we needed a whole chapter on technology, but we decided we did, because technology is obviously very important right now. And we just felt that even though chapter authors would bring it in, that we wanted to devote a whole chapter to this topic. And we're so happy that Kathleen Puckett, and we didn't know Kathleen, but we heard of her. She was highly recommended by a colleague, and she came in and wrote this chapter and gives all sorts of suggestions on ways that we can include technology. And she makes really clear that this is about supporting, enhancing. We're not preventing learning by using technology. We're using technology to help improve learning in a multitude of ways. And she has different frameworks that she has presented. And when you read this chapter, keep in mind the value of these different suggestions for children who are twice exceptional. That is another area of interest of mine. We have children who are above average IQ, who have dyslexia or who have ADHD. And for those children, we really want to, we want to teach them to read and write, but we need to be very cognizant of their need for intellectual engagement and support to recognize the fact that they need to be motivated and have higher level thinking and so on while they are going through their literacy instruction. So that, the frameworks in this chapter might be very helpful. And one of the things that this chapter recognizes that technology is evolving. And I'm actually excited that the chapter is so current, given the whole book is so current, given how many changes recently. But this chapter is just to remind you, yes, the technology is changing, but how are we going to use it in the best way for our students to support their learning? And then last but not least, the chapter on teacher development, which we were so happy to have written by Tiffany Peltier and Erin Washburn. And this chapter, we really actually, with the editors of Benchmark, we deliberated over where to put this chapter, because it could have been at the beginning, it could have been, the middle. But I think it wraps up and we all agreed, it wraps up the book really well, because we start with Laura's message. We give all sorts of information about instruction, differentiation. We talk about special needs. We get into the needs of older students. We address socioeconomic, dialect, multitude of languages, technology. And we need teacher professional development that supports teachers in moving forward with all these different needs that we have presented in the book. And Deen's art here has the little speech bubble. Many people think because this relates to Erin and Tiffany's work on refutation text and helping people understand what the science says, and helping people understand what things are myths and how to change your thinking. And refutation text is very respectful. It's a step-by-step process, and they explain this in the book to help people change their thinking. And one of the huge messages in the book is, how do we move forward in a positive way? And their chapter is just such a positive look at teacher development. And they present frameworks and then put these frameworks into teaching of reading and writing. But they also, in their chapter, they embrace the need for all students to be moving forward as they climb that ladder of reading and writing. And differentiated learning is necessary. And so we need professional development, supporting teachers in knowing when to have teacher-led, when to have student-led, and wherever our students are on the continuum, we want to support that. And Tiffany and Erin also talk about, this is ongoing. We are all learners. We are all learning all the time. And it's just a very positive but very informative book that we hope will support parents in terms of, this is what the teachers might need for my child. Hopefully we'll support educators. This is what I need. Administrators, this is what our teachers need. And then, wherever you go on the range of people supporting. Just so you know that book owners do have access to some additional information. There wasn't room for the glossary. The book was already longer than we intended. So we decided to put the glossary in the hub that's available to book owners. And we have additional information there, including what we call the series of blogs on some topics that were in the back of our mind, but we just didn't have room for in the book. And one of those blogs, for example, is a blog on twice exceptional, gifted, and dyslexia. So if you're wanting to look at that, you'll get more information. There's a QR code in the book on pages at the beginning and at the end. And this, Jan, you can talk about this since I'm about to cough.
Yes, we included this picture in the book at the end of the book when Nancy and I finally got to, we had met before we wrote the book, but we didn't meet during the creation of the book. But I finally got a chance to go up to British Columbia, to the lovely place where Nancy and her husband live. And we had a couple of fun days there, including wrangling her husband into taking this picture of us. We found a ladder in Nancy's garage and set this picture up. So it was a fun moment for us. And we hope you enjoyed that picture too. And we close the book with this statement that I hope is captured in what you've heard from us today, a very sincere wish that whatever your role, parent, teacher, administrator, leader, coach, legislator, whatever your role. May this book provide not only
educational assistant.
Yes. Oh, my word. Where would we be without our instructional assistants, special educators, specialists? We could go on. And I know we have some speech pathologists here today, and the researchers who continue to inform, whatever your role. May this book provide not only knowledge fundamentals and implementation guidance, but to support that enthusiasm for collaboration. It takes all of us to do this. That's why, that's definitely part of it. To shape a learning environment in which all of our students master those life-changing skills of reading and writing successfully, and we certainly hope joyfully. And that's a lovely way to end, but we're not quite ready for the questions yet, because on the next slide, Nancy, we've got a couple more things to share. We did send out early versions of the book to many different people. We were eager, we'd been working on this with our editors kind of in a little bit of a vacuum, and it was very affirming to us, first to get the beautiful foreword from Marianne Wolf, but again, generously, almost everybody we asked to write a review of the book did so, one of whom was Dr. Reed Lyon, and I'm absolutely sure that most of you, at least from the United States, know Dr. Reed Lyons, who led the National Institutes of Health during the leading up to and through the Reading First years. And he crafted the framework for research in reading and writing that continue to this day. So all of us who value research information hold Dr. Lyon in such high regard. So when he reviewed the book and called it a masterpiece, that's still difficult for me to say out loud, but talk about tears in the eyes, Nancy. And he noticed, he saw that our attempt to link science that he contributed to in such a major way, that science undergirding reading and writing development with the science of instruction. How do you do this? It's one thing to know what should work or what has evidence of working, but how do we do it in the classroom? And with thanks to all of our chapter authors, did a brilliant job of weaving those two things together. So we're grateful to the authors and to the people who have read it. And many of you, I can see in the chat, you don't yet have your book. You're anxious to get them. So we have some good information about that. Yeah. So Nancy, if you would.
Sure. Just before, I just want to say there are some more endorsements on my website. And there are more endorsements to be put there, and that'll come out through social media. But I meant to say, when I was talking about the parent caregiver, that on my website is an endorsement from Kate Mayer, who we asked Kate to look at the book from the perspective of a parent. Mm-hmm. And she basically said this book needs to be in everybody's home library. So if you're a parent, you might want to go and look at that, because she does write, as she said, the parent of 5 children who did not climb the ladder easily or something like that. Mm-hmm. So, and before we get into the book, I want to just say my huge thanks. I know Jan shares in this, but Jan had worked with the people at Benchmark before, and I hadn't. And I really, I want to thank them from the bottom of my heart for creating what people have told me is a beautiful book. I did see it at Plain Talk, and I have a cover, but I'm still waiting for my book to arrive. So I'm still working with the PDF, but there was a decision made, which I totally agree with, to get it out to all the people who had pre-ordered. So my book will come, but the book, I was stunned myself when I saw it at Plain Talk, and they really created a beautiful book. And that was one of our goals, to create a book. When I read Jan's book, Conquering Dyslexia, I texted or emailed right away and said, that book made me smile. You know, it was so positive. It was beautifully presented, the information. And so, so Benchmark was the perfect publisher to create this book, and this whole team of people, you know, from President Sarah to Jennifer and Julie and Natasha and the editing team to the design team to Geraldine, who is now dealing with all the marketing, and so many others. We are really, really grateful for their all they did to produce this beautiful book. Because, you know, the information was there, but we want it to be read. We want it to be read by many different people. And then the other person we want to thank is Dean Stanton from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And I'm not sure whether I'm covering the screen. Just come back here. I was trying to move our pictures, but to make sure that Alberta,
it's fine. It doesn't show up.
Okay. Oh, good. I never know. So yeah. So Dean's art, as you've seen, is fun and funky, but it also delivers so many important messages that we need to remember as we go forward. So many messages. So thank you, Dean. And our thanks to you. And this is not the latest map of the people attending today, but I think it was it last Tuesday maybe that Amy and
more countries, more countries. But we did get New Zealand in there, and we have
yes. At this time there were 34 countries, and I think as of yesterday there were 37 countries attending this or who had registered. Some people may not watch it till later because they're asleep right now. But it's really exciting to us. It's a privilege for me to have my work used in so many places. I feel really honored to have had all the contributing authors contribute a book that revolves around my infographic, and honored to have Jan co-edit with me. So it really is, it is amazing. And thanks to all of you for attending. We're not finished, but I did want to thank you. Oh yes, the fireworks. And is this the last? All right. And somebody else can talk about it. Jan, you can talk about it.
I'm happy to do this. And the next slide too, Nancy, is really important because this is the information about an offer that Benchmark just shared with us this week, that in honor of Read Washington sponsoring this book kickoff, they very graciously decided to allow free shipping, at least in the United States and Canada, which is significant. And I know Amy and Julie have been putting the code in the chat, but you can also access it here if you're watching this recording. Going to Benchmark. A couple of people have already tried to use it and found that it wasn't working, but there's a step that you have to do first. As it says here, ignore the guest checkout is disabled, because you first have to go through a step of creating an account. And that doesn't mean you're going to get inundated with stuff from Benchmark. It's just a process that they needed to use for their accounting. So we're very grateful to them. And we also know, and we're getting some comments in the chat. One of my friends and colleagues from the University of Iceland in Reykjavik is here today, and said that the book looks very interesting. She was saying it should probably be used in teacher preparation programs. However, it's not being used at the University of Iceland right now because they're having trouble getting access to the book. So another thing that Benchmark shared with us is that they want to be sure to work with international distributors. And if you are interested in having access internationally to this book and perhaps would like to serve as a distributor, they've created a Google spreadsheet. So there's a link right in this spreadsheet. And we're going to have to do something about the recording, make sure people can get access to that when they see the recording. There will be a Google document that you can give your information confidentially then to Benchmark, and they will contact you about ways to access the book in an international market. So let's stop sharing then, if everybody had got their access to all the different pieces. And we have some questions, I think. So Amy, do you want to share the questions with us, or Julie, or should we just access those ourselves?
Either way, whatever's easiest for you.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions. So maybe should I just dive in and share some?
Please. That would be fantastic.
Great. Okay. So let's see here. Hi, Dr. Young and Dr. Hasbrouck. What is the difference between universal design for learning and differentiation? I find that there is a debate between those two approaches. I might be wrong, though. What are your thoughts?
Do you want to do this, Jan?
Well, differentiation is really, I mean, that's a very good question. And I see it as differentiation is just the idea that we need to design and provide instruction based on identified students' need. UDL, Universal Design Framework, is a framework for doing that. It is one that has been widely used in special education, and it is also discussed in detail in the chapter on technology. She uses that as one of two different frameworks for designing how to use technology in a differentiated way. So that's what I see it as, is differentiation is the idea that we should provide especially design instruction. UDL gives us a framework for doing that. And there's a second one that I'm forgetting the framework, but it's in the technology.
SEMR.
Yeah, right. SAMR.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are others besides UDL, but thank you for that question. Hope that was helpful.
I want to jump in with a question that somebody else wrote. There's been a lot of talk about moving away from small group instruction and to do whole group instruction. So what are your thoughts about that?
Do you want me to try and answer?
Yeah, you start.
If I start to cough, you can take over, but the ladder of reading and writing continuum makes it clear that that children have different needs, and so if you are delivering instruction to everybody the same way, somebody is not getting their needs met, and so we need to offer differentiated instruction from the beginning in order to meet the needs. And the whole group instruction does not align to the research that supports our book. If you want to look at the research of Carol Connor, we have her cited throughout the book. Really solid research showing that we need to be differentiating based on what she calls the constellation of skills that each student brings to the classroom from preschool up. And her research actually showed that if children are not getting what they need, not just that children, other people have shown that if we have whole class instruction, that children with dyslexia are not getting what they need in many cases. But Connor's research showed that children who are more advanced in their knowledge of the code will be delayed if they are getting code-based instruction that they don't need. And that's really important. And that's what the research in gifted ed has shown this. And we can't delay anybody. So if everybody is being taught the same way, just look at that. If you can justify that every single person in that whole group instruction, every single person needs that, then you could justify it. But what we're saying is that's not the case. And we cannot delay children, whether they are in the red area, and there's been such a focus on building knowledge of those children for whom it is challenging, and on early intervention, and on making sure that a child doesn't look like they have a learning disability because they're just not getting the instruction they need. But also we need to keep in mind the light green and the dark green. And
Thank you, Nancy. I thank you for that answer.
I'm on the pulpit.
Well, I just wanted to add to that. One of the concerns that people have said about small group instruction is too often that just dilutes the amount of instruction that kids are getting, because only a few are meeting with the teacher and all these kids are doing things that are less valuable. And that's one of the values of Chapter 5, Vicki Gibson's chapter, where she provides a framework where even though you are only providing direct instruction to a small group at a time, the children are and can be and should be involved in activities that are enriching and engaging and productive. And her framework will give you an idea for that. An alternative to that, but still this idea of differentiation was discussed in Chapter 2, where we talk about cross classroom.
Chapter 3.
Chapter 3, yes, Chapter 3, cross-classroom reorganization. So you take all your advanced readers and give them to a teacher, and then you can do whole class instruction at least some of the day. So there are different ways of approaching this, but it has to be needs-based instruction.
Yeah, they're just stemming from that, so that the cross grade. So you could have within a class, you could have within a grade, or you could have a cross grades.
Yeah.
And a cross grade is happening. Some people are doing that. They're calling walk to read. But what we have to remember is, if children are going to a different grade, you still are going to have a group of children, even if, let's say, you've got your children who are in the light green area, they're going at a faster pace. You're still going to use the strategies within Chapter 5 to differentiate. You're not, because you still need to differentiate. It just means that the skill level has been, the range has been reduced.
The range has been reduced by that.
Yeah, you're still using those strategies from Chapter 5.
Is there information on how to select a systematic phonics program for your school or for beginning instruction within the book?
We stayed away from curriculum completely for a wide variety of reasons. So we discuss, Chapter 3 discusses, I think, very comprehensively and accurately the kinds of things that should be in a comprehensive that address instructional materials that address the how and the why, but more of a general framework rather than, and we certainly don't recommend chose not to recommend any particular curriculum, or specifically that's outside the focus of this book, is choosing curriculum materials.
Yeah. Yeah. And the one message is that there's not going to be one program. If you just have one program in your school, that's likely not enough. And I remember Mark Seidenberg saying a few years ago, there's never going to be one program that covers everything. You're going to need to supplement. And so it's a matter of what programs, plural, but we just tell you what children need in the different areas. And then you can look at whether your current programs provide that and how you might need to supplement or choose, in the future.
It was also asked about whether you address background knowledge or building background knowledge in the book for comprehension.
Well, certainly I can think of two places where that's very specifically. It was in the chapter on specific comprehension reading disorders, as well as the various chapters on language development and developmental language disorder, and the chapter on older students. So that theme of background knowledge being woven in very thoughtfully, judiciously, and in a targeted way for some students who really need that particularly. So yes.
We also wove it into Chapter 3. So, and that we, during the discussions about content of the book, we decided that was the way we wanted to go with background knowledge, because it needs to be integrated into conversations all along the way rather than separated.
Thank you all for taking the time to attend, those who attended live today, and those who will take time to watch this presentation, this walk through our new book that clearly we're very excited about. Thank you, Read Washington, for framing this and giving us this opportunity. We don't have right now another event scheduled, but keep in touch, and we will keep in touch with you because we will have some more events. And the whole purpose of our organization, the work that Nancy and I have done over the last few years, is because we believe that together we can prevent the unnecessary pain of reading failure. So thank you all again, and thank you for the work that you do, and enjoy the rest of the school year.